Coming up on Brookland News Live, we are following the breaking developments out of Venezuela right now after two 7-point plus magnitude earthquakes destroyed, as you can see here, some of the infrastructure. We are already getting a pretty high death toll. We'll bring you that coming up here in just a few moments. And happening right now, President Trump set for a meeting with the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. We are monitoring that. We're going to bring you up to date on that, plus all of the big drama from Capitol Hill that happened yesterday. And we will bring you up to date on your forecast from right here in Brooklyn. Rain set to be what we are going to see once again. To be honest, I'm getting tired of it too. We're kicking things off right now here on Brooklyn News Live. Stick with us because it all starts right now.
It's time for all the news you need and more. Brookland News Live starts right now.
And it is good to be with you. I'm Jackson Mitchell on what is the start to a busy Thursday evening. We, of course, are following the breaking developments right now that you can see from that live camera in Caracas, Venezuela, where, again, an earthquake hit there. So we are monitoring that for all of you, and we'll bring you updates as we get them. We're going to have a full segment on that coming up in a few moments. We are also continuing to follow what has been some breaking news from Capitol Hill. We're going to bring you up to date on that as well coming up in our show today. To start things off, though, what has been a busy week. I apologize for not being with you guys here yesterday. We are here today, though, to catch you up on, again, a busy Wednesday and a busy Thursday, especially when we talk about Capitol Hill, and that is where we start with. So pretty much, we'll talk about things here. Congress had passed the largest housing authority bill in multiple generations. Excuse me here, getting some of our graphics ready for you here. So essentially, again, Congress passing this very large housing affordability bill, the biggest in a generation this week, which was a rare bipartisan achievement called the, quote, 21st Century Road to Housing Act, with House Speaker Mike Johnson and Senate Majority Leader John Thune both celebrating the passage and announcing a signing ceremony in the Statuary Hall at the Capitol Hill. On Capitol Hill, I should say. But less than 2 hours later, before the ceremony, Trump posted on Truth Social that he would be canceling the entire thing, saying he will not sign the bill until Congress first passes the Save America Act. His sweeping voter ID and election overhaul bill, calling it, quote, a national emergency. So then President Trump was scheduled to visit Capitol Hill yesterday for a lunch. He ended up visiting. We're going to play some of his remarks here coming up in just a few moments. It was so abrupt that Arkansas Congressman French Hill, one of the bill's key authors, was already at a press conference celebrating the bill when Trump pulled the rug out, unknowingly praising a proposal Trump had just killed. Quote, this bill does that, so I'm proud of the work that both chambers have struggled through, end quote, Hill said, standing next to Speaker Johnson moments before learning about what Trump had done. Trump, again, then heading to Capitol Hill for this scheduled lunch with Republican senators that, well, quickly turned contentious. We're going to first play for you President Trump's remarks from Venezuela, from Capitol Hill yesterday, and then we will talk on the other side about what was that meeting about. Take a listen here.
Proud of the party. We like our leader. We like everybody really in the room. I don't like a few people, but that's okay. I think you know who they are. But I'll give you that information someday. But for the most part, we have a really well unified party. And I said it very strongly. We have the hottest country anywhere in the world. We're the most powerful. We're the smartest. We're the most respected. 2 years ago, we were a laughingstock all over the world. We had a terrible group of people represented us. Every leader, I just left G7, every leader, and we had a lot of people in addition to G7, as you know, came, everyone said, what we've done in a year and a half is a miracle. We have the hottest country in the world, and we want to keep it that way. We have more factories being built right now than we have at any point at any time in the history of our country, and all of those factories are opening up soon. It's all jobs, and our job numbers are incredible anyway. I see that oil just broke the $70 number. Who would have thought that was going to happen? And that's during a war, and Iran is being very nice. They're agreeing to everything that I want, and they have to. Otherwise, we just go back and do what we have to do. Thank you.
Yeah, so you see President Trump there. I mean, he was didn't really speak much about the topic at the time. This was after his meeting with Republicans there on Capitol Hill, as he again spoke there. I want to show you guys a story from MS Now. Excuse me, I'm getting it ready for you to air it to you. Here we go. This was President Trump. This was inside Trump's closed-door class with Senate Republicans. I was reading this last night as I was kind of getting prepared for some of the things that we were going to talk about today. I just wanted to kind of read a large part of this story to you because it takes you inside this closed-door meeting with Senate Republicans in what was a major clash, because of course Senate Republicans, many of those Republicans, they've broken with President Trump several times. Not only that, they're frustrated at the fact that the president is now going back and saying, well, I'm not going to sign this if you guys don't pass voter ID laws. Inside this MS Now story, it says, quote, tensions were already running high when President Donald Trump arrived at the Senate's GOP closed lunch. Goes on to say, at the Senate GOP's closed-door lunch on Wednesday, within minutes, he was in a shouting match. This story reads, quote, Trump's meeting with Senate Republicans, which lasted just over an hour at the Capitol, was described by various sources as, quote, tense, spirited, and lively. One source familiar with the conversation, granted anonymity to discuss the private meeting, said the gathering was a, quote, venting session for Trump. The lunch came at a rocky but pivotal moment in Trump's relationship with Senate Republicans. In recent weeks, GOP lawmakers have shown greater willingness to challenge the president, whether by criticizing his efforts in Iran, rejecting his demands to pass a hardline voting bill, or denouncing his pick to serve as acting director of national intelligence. At the time, Trump has continued to frustrate lawmakers with his abrupt decisions, which have repeatedly derailed GOP plans on Capitol Hill. If I scroll down here, Cassidy told reporters that I'll read this part right here. When Trump finally came before senators on Wednesday, Senator Bill Cassidy, who recently lost his primary to a Trump-backed challenger, confronted the president over the Iran Memorandum of Understanding. According to a source familiar with the conversation, Cassidy began, quote, yelling at the president. Cassidy told reporters that the interaction started when Trump asked the room why anyone would vote for the Iran War Powers Resolution. Cassidy said he asked Trump if he really wanted the answer. Trump responded that he did. It went off rails from there, the story states, and as you continue to scroll down, it says, according to two sources, Trump eventually told Cassidy to, quote, to sit down, but Cassidy refused. He raised his voice even higher. Trump responded by calling Cassidy a, quote, lunatic. Cassidy referred to Trump as, quote, brother, prompting Trump to reply that he wasn't his, quote, brother. Eventually, Senate Majority Leader John Thune tried to de-escalate the situation, and other senators quietly encouraged Cassidy to sit down. After the meeting, however, Cassidy showed no signs of backing down. Quote, I make no apologies for standing up to the president, if you will, trying to demand more information be shared with the Senate and more information be shared with the American people, unquote, he told reporters. I have no apologies for that. So then again, a reported shouting match, and then another point during the lunch as you continue just kind of we're scrolling through this article. It says Trump went after Senator Dave McCormick, the Republican from Pennsylvania, who missed Tuesday's vote on an Iran Powers Resolution. According to a source, the War Powers Resolution, which will carry the force of law, was ultimately adopted 48-50, and Trump was angry that McCormick missed the vote. And what's interesting here is McCormick was with the president at a rally, and then this story as well notes that even if McCormick was there, he would not have saved the vote in any way. It would have still have been adopted. Senator John Kinney later told reporters that Trump was, quote, mad as a murder hornet about the war's power-lution. And again, it goes on. So this clearly contentious meeting talked about inside this closed-door clash in this new MS Now article. And you can just see how things escalated so quickly. And I think it just goes to show that even if you're a Republican president, there's of course always going to be clashes with the people of your own party, and we've seen that especially as Trump has come out with policies that do not align with what is kind of the moderate Republicans, these Republicans that are just everyday people. So behind the scenes here, again, Republicans, they have said that they have been blindsided by this announcement from President Trump. As we noted, how they're blindsided by it is that, French Hill, the Republican Arkansas senator, was in a press conference talking about the success of the housing affordability bill that was passed by the Senate. And then in the middle of that, Trump has this Truth Social that says, I'm not signing it until you pass voter ID legislation, which would essentially require a voter to have kind of a proof of citizenship before they vote, so an ID before they vote. Okay. If you're watching us right now on Brookland News Live, we're going to seek in our first break of the hour. When we come back, we've got more of those top headlines. We're going to bring you an update from Venezuela that is coming up here in just a few moments. Stick with us. Again, the breaking news out of Venezuela, those 2 earthquakes, will bring you up to date on that when we return after the commercial break. And we are back with the breaking news out of Venezuela and what has been, well, an extremely devastating situation there. Two powerful earthquakes struck Venezuela Wednesday evening, less than a minute apart, collapsing buildings across the capital of Caracas and killing at least 188 people, with that number expected to go up 1,500, more than 1,500 here injured, and an estimated 200 still trapped under rubble as the search and rescue operations continue into this morning, and you can see they're continuing this afternoon. Now, the first quake registered a magnitude 7.2, followed just 39 seconds later by an even more powerful 7.5 magnitude main shock, the strongest earthquake to strike Venezuela in more than 125 years. The epicenter was near the town of San Felipe, I should say, about 100 miles west of Caracas. Venezuela's acting president, Delcy Rodriguez, declared the state of La Guaira a full disaster zone, calling it, quote, a true tragedy, with dozens of buildings collapsed there alone. Simon Bolivar International Airport was damaged and all flights have been canceled. A tsunami warning had been briefly issued for Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands before being lifted. Secretary of State Marco Rubio now promising, quote, a big, fast, and effective U.S. response to the disaster, while Mexico announced it is deploying a team of rescuers and health personnel to the region. Wow, just a devastating story to hear there. Again, two back-to-back 7.2 and then a 7.5 magnitude earthquakes striking near Caracas, Venezuela. Just devastating to hear about. We want to go back to the story we were talking about before the break, about the story on Capitol Hill, as Trump has now refused to pass and sign an affordability bill until voter ID legislation will be passed. Mike Johnson spoke yesterday about it. Again, today is when President Trump and Mike Johnson are set to have a meeting. It was set to begin at 2 p.m. It's our understanding that the president is still at the White House. We're standing by for it to begin. We haven't got any updates from the White House press pool on when he plans to travel to Capitol Hill to meet with him, or if he is meeting with him at the White House. I'm actually going to check on that really quickly here, as to if we know if he's going to travel to the White House. This is live news for you, so we are able to fact check ourselves in real time, and I'm just checking again the daily schedule to see when this was. Okay, this was today. It was about to be. It doesn't say whether it's in the Oval Office at 2 p.m. So we don't quite know if Mike Johnson is there. Did he take a back entrance? You know, that type of thing. We don't know. But he did speak. Mike Johnson did speak yesterday and was asked about the news in Washington. So let's take a look at that.
Later can it go? Because as you said, affordability is huge for Americans. This is a key bill to do it with.
Yeah.
If it doesn't get
you're talking about days. You know, the window of time before it just passed last night, right? So 10 days is my estimation. He'll do it within that 10-day window. So yeah.
Speaking of the World Cup and rights, the Supreme Court is going to rule perhaps as soon as this week on President Trump's challenge to birthright citizenship. But that comes as Republicans, as you just did, and the White House are celebrating the U.S. men's national team, whose top scorer is a birthright citizen. How should Americans square what looks like a celebration of immigration with efforts to criminalize birthright citizenship?
Yeah, so like all good things, they can be abused, and birthright citizenship goes back to the root of the country, the history of the tradition. You look at the original intent of the Constitution and the founders and what they were doing, of course. They were facing a very different set of circumstances than we're facing now. We know that it's been abused in recent years because people have literally just come over the border just to have a baby so that they can, avail themselves of the social welfare system of America. As I mentioned earlier, we're the most benevolent nation in the history of the world, but this must be done within reason. And so that's why the arguments were presented to the Supreme Court. Is it time to reevaluate that? We'll see where the court comes down on it. I think they're going to look at that as originalists as they are as textualists. I think they're also going to consider the factors that are at issue and the strength and stability of the country. The president makes some very compelling arguments. A lot of people do, and we'll see how that shakes out. So I don't think it's inconsistent at all. I think we can celebrate immigration, legal immigration. We are a nation of immigrants, as we all recognize. My grandfather came over on a boat from Sicily with 8 siblings and started a fruit stand, you know, and I'm the Speaker of the House. Only in America, okay? But we embrace that. We know that that's part of our history, but we also expect that people will come, they will follow the spirit and the letter of the law, they will assimilate to our country and not try to transplant Sharia law and all these other things, and change who we are. And I think that's a very important thing for American identity, and I look forward to the
Alrighty there, so you've got Speaker Mike Johnson on Capitol Hill talking about this, saying, you know, affordability is important, but voter ID legislation is also important there. So again, Speaker Mike Johnson continuing to speak on this. We are again waiting to know if this meeting is occurring right now, if it is wrapped up, what's going on there. We're waiting for information to come out on that. Again, it was set to happen at the White House, so we are monitoring the White House there on your screen. We always have the feed ready to go, pulled up for you, and we are watching it to see if we do get any details to come out of there. We do have some breaking news into us just now from the Jonesboro Police Department. Again, this is just coming in. The Jonesboro Police Department posting to its social media announcing the arrest and a special operation conducted at a massage parlor on Southwest Drive earlier today. They say it was an assistance with ASU Police Department HSI Hope Found, the Family Crisis Center, the U.S. Marshals, and members of the Jonesboro SWAT team. They say this is an arrest tied to an investigation that began back in February of 2026, where the Jonesboro Police Department received a complaint submitted to the FBI regarding a massage parlor. The complaint advised that a woman went to Tree Massage at 5510 Southwest Drive for a massage. She stated that the massager kept massaging inappropriate places on her body after repeatedly being told to stop. She then burned her with hot rocks, even though she had never requested them. The massager then demanded a tip and became upset when she did not provide one. Now, surveillance was conducted, and it was discovered that the business operated 7 days a week with extended hours. Only Asian females have been seen working there. The investigation also revealed that employees were living on the business premises. In April, a known subject was seen entering the business and being inside for approximately 1 hour. The subject was interviewed and advised that this massage parlor would perform, quote, additional services for compensation and tips, services that he was familiar with. The owner and business manager, Nay Lee, was taken into custody and will be booked into the Crockett County Detention Center for promoting prostitution, second degree. This case is still under investigation. Again, you see the photo of what appears to be Nay Lee being arrested there. Again, that happened this morning on Southwest Drive in Jonesboro. A business said to be giving inappropriate massages, demanding tips as well. Again, breaking news right now out of Jonesboro that we are following, and we'll bring you updates on when we get them. Again, set to be booked into the Craighead County Detention Center. Okay, we are going to sneak in another break. If you're watching us right now, I'm Jackson Mitchell. It's Thursday, June 25th. Much more news to come. Stick with us. You're watching Brookland News Live. We're back after a few moments. Okay, sorry for the extended break there. You are right back here. It is a busy day here on Brooklyn News Live. Want to get back to the story we brought to you as well earlier in the hour about the devastating earthquakes in Caracas, Venezuela. Take a look there at the wreckage is being cleaned up. Continue and the search and rescue is operations are continuing. We know that there are others still trapped. At least 100 is what they're reporting right now is suggesting. So again, you can see just the wreckage there, the rubbish, you could say. I think rubbish is the word they use. All the trash from the broken infrastructure after that major earthquake there. We want to get back to it because we do have some video to show you. First, we're going to start off with some aerial footage. This is excuse me, from the Associated Press from earlier today. Let me get you. Let me get you that. Give me just 1 second. Here is that footage from earlier today, showing you the wreckage from the scene, an aerial view of the wreckage from the scene there. As you again take a look. Just devastating to see just buildings now on the ground. I want to show you the moment that it all happened. And, well, someone nearby was taking a video. Take a look.
Está temblando. Está temblando. Observen cómo quedó el aeropuerto Maiquetía estando nosotros acá adentro. Miren, miren el desastre que hay. Acabado totalmente. Observen después el terremoto. Observen cómo quedó todo. Señores, grave la situación que estamos viviendo acá. Terremoto de alta magnitud. Miren cómo quedó todo. Pueden observar, yo grabé en el momento del terremoto, yo grabé todo. Ayudamos a sacar a la gente también. Miren cómo está el techo. Todo quedó destrozado.
All is destroyed. Just devastating to see the wreckage there. And as we continue to take a look at it, you see the aerial view, then you see the live view there on the right side of your screen. It is something that we are monitoring right now and will continue to monitor this story. We'll be back right here in just 30 seconds with more of the big stories. We are going to have your forecast as well coming up here on Brookland News Live, so stick with us for that. When we come back, some rulings today out of the Supreme Court, and well, they were mostly in favor of President Donald Trump. When we come back, we've got that story for you. You're watching Brookland News Live. Alrighty, like I said, it was going to be a very short break. A look at the Supreme Court there right now as we are getting two major wins today for President Donald Trump. The first ruling says in asylum seekers at the on asylum seekers at the border, saying that someone who presents themselves to the U.S. border U.S. border officials while still claiming standing on Mexican soil cannot legally claim asylum because they have not yet technically entered the United States. Justice Samuel Alito wrote the majority saying, quote, in ordinary speech, no one would say that a person arrives in a place before the person enters that place. The decision clears the way for Trump administration to revive a controversial policy called, quote, metering, which limits the number of asylum claims officials are required to process each day by turning migrants away before they cross the border. DHS General Counsel James Percival called it, quote, a vindication, saying, quote, we have yet again been vindicated by the Supreme Court, unquote. In the second ruling here by the Supreme Court, they allowed the Trump administration to end temporary protected status, known as TPS, for hundreds of thousands of Haitian and Syrian immigrants currently living in or under the U.S., and a humanitarian program that shields them from deportation. The court ruled 6-3 that TPS law bars courts from reviewing the Secretary of Homeland Security's decisions on whether to grant, extend, or terminate the status. The legal team for the Haitian nationals warned the decision, quote, will directly result in thousands of innocent people dying violent, needless deaths, unquote, while the White House called both rulings a, quote, tremendous win for the Trump administration there. So again, two major wins there for President Trump at the Supreme Court today. Big ones, I should say, for the president at the Supreme Court on temporary protected status. And then that other ruling there. All right, if you're watching Brookland News Live, the time is now 6:35. We're going to dig into your forecast here. Things look a little wet throughout the next few days. Let's get you to it. Tonight, some thunderstorms could occur, scattered thunderstorms throughout the area, unpredictable in the way as are they going to land on Brooklyn? Are they going to land on your neighborhood, essentially? Tonight, though, low 75, so warm throughout the evening. By Friday, high of 87, low of 77. Cloudy skies continue into Friday. Possibility of showers between the Arkansas and Missouri state line that we're monitoring, so beware of that if you're heading out of town on Friday for the weekend. On Saturday, high of 90, low of 77. Scattered thunderstorms return. We are likely to see some rain in the PMs, so we're monitoring that, and we'll bring you updates on your forecast tomorrow as well throughout the weekend and where rain chances stand. Right now, a live look there to our camera and Brookland traffic, not too bad at all. We're going to sneak in another quick break. When we come back, we've got more of the big stories making headlines on the other side. Welcome back here to Brookland News Live, a live camera right now at the UAP Disclosure Forum on, well, the gathering of the who's of the UFO world as lawmakers, military, and agency leaders gather in DC to discuss cutting-edge insights on UAP-related policy, transparency, security, congressional oversight, whistleblowers, and balancing disclosure for the American people. You are looking right now at what is a group of lawmakers, a group of people from the UAP Disclosure Forum now discussing UFOs and well, things that are just, well, unidentified in the air.
Your own expertise, it'll play out. It's kind of an empowerment thing. Susan?
Yeah, and I think the best way to engage academia, especially in the current science funding landscape, is create named funds for studying the biggest mysteries, the biggest anomalies in these fields. And this touches so many different fields. Physics is obviously the big one, but you know what the other big one is earth science. Oh my God, we're going to learn so much about this planet and the other life that's here today, that's always been here, that was here in the past. There's so many amazing things that are going to come out of this research. Consciousness, neuroscience. The world is going to change so much after disclosure. And we need scientists to be involved because, you know, our current president or whoever is next, whenever this or the next one, whoever, you know, comes up to the stage someday and says it, no one's going to believe it until, you know, they see the peer-reviewed science and it's going to come out of that community that, you know, this is real, it's been validated. So, you know, we need to start just by saying that this is a valid area of science and we are going to fund it. And there's lots of different models also quickly that you can do besides just academia. There's one called focused research organizations, where basically it's almost like a DARPA-style challenge. You set up a nonprofit, and then over like 5 to 7 years with maybe $20 to $70 million in funding, you tackle a really big problem. So that could be like mapping the connectome of the brain, or they have one now called Echo Labs, which is looking at multi-sensor fusion monitoring forests. So there's different kinds of like ways you could organize this, that rather than it being stuck in some, you know, SAP program or in a corporate silo that's going to get cut next time there's a quarterly downsizing. You know, we have dedicated funding to specifically solve these problems with scientists that want to devote themselves full-time for 5 to 7 years to really tackle some of the big challenges that we put up here today. So I think that really is the call to action, is that this needs to be a priority, you know, for the United States government and our science funders, that this is the greatest, you know, scientific discovery of our lifetimes, maybe of all time, and we need to fund it, support it appropriately.
Well said. And speaking of science, and with apologies in advance for running a few minutes over, I am from the space industry. Blowing up schedules is what we do. It's funny because it's true. I do want to take a moment to talk about an extraordinary project that's being done under the auspices of the Disclosure Foundation, where it's my pleasure to lead an effort where we are going to go through the NASA archives to conduct a review for UAP. Thank you so much. This was a recommendation that was made explicitly by the NASA UAP Independent Study Team. It was later supported by the research director for UAP at NASA, but has not been implemented. We are going to solve that issue and conduct a comprehensive review of what we've got open source. Now, look, we all spend a lot of time declassifying data, going after things that are hidden, secrets, but there is a treasure trove of open, available data that could help us unlock this mystery. In the first tranche of material that was released by the Department of War, there was the image of triangular craft or lights in a triangular formation that was released. That image had been sitting in the archives for decades, almost a half century, but goes ignored. And this is why it's so important for us to delve in what's likely a treasure trove of data in what's just publicly available, and to leverage new technologies, artificial intelligence, machine learning, to be able to conduct a comprehensive review. what's the worst that happens here? We discover some sort of incredible new scientific phenomena. We discover adversarial spacecraft. And boy, do we ever have a murderers row, the Avengers of UAP science, beginning with Dr. Monali Derek-Shani, who's here. Let's have a round of applause. Monali. There he is. He's standing up. And by the way, you talk about the scientific stigma. There is someone who lost their job, again, not for saying that UAP is extraterrestrial. I watched the interview that Monali did. He was almost lawyer-like in avoiding coming to a conclusion, but they fired him anyway. And I am so grateful to him and his courage and people like him who are willing to stand up to academic orthodoxy, to fight for the truth, to fight for accountability, and to fight for the scientific method. Begin with study, get the conclusion. And he's done some tremendous work looking at anomalies on the moon. Second, and unfortunately, she's not here, but here in spirit is Dr. Beatrice Villarreal. Let's have a round of applause for Beatrice. Now, I talk about the struggles with academia. Beatrice got peer-reviewed research on UAP. How often do we ever see that? And by going through the NASA archives, we can help bolster the work that she's done, look at more anomalies, and, you know, more than anything, what we've got in the archives now, that's about to increase exponentially. We have a terrific, young, energetic, dynamic new administrator of NASA in Jared Isaacman. And if anyone has been following, he has said, we are going to land on the moon monthly, every month. And with the sensors and the cameras that we have on those spacecraft, we will be able to gather data in cislunar space on the moon, the likes of which we have never seen before. So I am so excited of working with Beatrice, of working with Monali, Dr. Travis Taylor. Where are your Travis Taylor fans out there? Travis, we held our first organizational meeting. Travis was telling me about finding Saturn blueprints in friends' barns in Huntsville. Like, this is the state, unfortunately, sometimes of the archives. But we're so excited to implement this very important recommendation of the UAP Task Force and to collaborate with our friends at NASA who have been just wonderful, and to brief the FBI, the UAP Task Force here in Congress, the public, and to leverage citizen science. That I'm just describing the leadership team. The real work will be done by the citizen scientists as well as corporations that will be volunteering their capabilities with AI and ML. We are so excited to beginning this effort. So with that, I want to thank again the Disclosure Foundation. I want to thank our two fantastic panelists. Thanks to everyone here in the room. Let's make every day Disclosure Day.
Alrighty, so the wrap-up of a disclosure forum there. As you hear them speaking, it's a forum. Maybe we might see a next group of speakers. It might just be wrapping up, but I don't see everybody standing up waiting to move, so we might just see someone else speak here, and it looks like we are.
All right, we are moving into our final panel. We're going to talk about financial impacts, risks, and opportunities. Joining me as moderator are Pippa Malmgren, economist, I would say geopolitical.
So you hear them there. This is going to be the financial impact of all of this. So essentially, this is a group calling for more investigation, more publications, more, what's the word, transparency on UFOs, unidentified objects, unidentified flying objects, and just UOs, unidentified objects in general. Let's continue listening in here.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I am really excited, even though apologies, we're running a little bit shorter on time than we were hoping for. Such is life. Let's talk about the narrative out there that, oh, if we were to disclose what we know about non-human intelligence, that the markets would crash. The riots in the streets, dogs and cats living together. When I've been interviewed about this, as having a background in finance and investments, I try to counterbalance the narrative by saying, okay, let's look at some facts. How much did the markets crash when Trump issued his executive order about releasing everything we have on alien intelligence? They were flat to up. What happened in each of the latest releases of data? They were flat to up. What's happened since 2017 or 2023? If we had had our money in the S&P 500, you would have done quite well. Those are facts. I'm not sure, what the sort of the R squared, if you will, is on that, how much explanatory power those facts have, but those are still facts that have to be contended with. And not dealing with a circular narrative that, this is disruptive, therefore there will be financial calamity, and there will be financial calamity because it's disruptive. This sort of circular reasoning drives me bananas. So, Pippa, what I'd like to do is discuss, you have an incredible, I first learned about you actually through the Grant Williams podcast, because I'm a huge finance nerd, and I subscribe to that. Your conversations with him about the global macro strategies are wonderful. Feel free to invite Grant also to be a part of the Disclosure Foundation. So I'd like you to tee up sort of the global macro perspective on this and maybe explain for the audience what that means. And then, Matt, I'm super interested with you as a market practitioner with an ETF, which stands for Exchange Traded Fund, which is a financial product you can invest in. Anybody in this room can invest in that. How you're tactically approaching this subject with your firm. So please, Pippa, thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for bringing us all together. This is quite an extraordinary gathering. Look, humanity is at this extraordinary moment where we are expanding our scientific discovery, our technological innovation at a speed and scale that hasn't really been experienced, perhaps since the Industrial Revolution. We are effectively putting prosthetics deep into space that will extend the capacity of our eyes to see far into the galaxy, and also deep into subspace to see what is happening at the level of atoms, electrons, and even subatomic particles. Naturally, as we expand our spectrum of perception, we are seeing more things that we didn't either acknowledge before or know about before. And so there's a kind of ontological issue arising just from this discovery process. In markets, in financial markets, and indeed for civilization, it is this process of scientific discovery and technological innovation that raises standards of living, that allows us to solve problems, and therefore it is civilizationally critical that we do this. If we look at the issue this way, then the problem we have is not that the markets panic. It is the obstacles to the discovery process. It is perhaps harsh to say, but maybe important to say, as a financial market person and as someone who's worked in the national security world, as was mentioned earlier in the day, the congressional staffer who is the obstacle to progress is the national security problem. The scientists who refuse to allow science to be used to address these matters is the national security problem. And in fact, these attitudes and people are a civilizational drag. So this is critical for markets, because if we're going to maintain the pace of discovery and innovation, we have to remove these obstacles to progress. We have to stop allowing the people with the greatest skepticism to define the speed at which we proceed, and instead allow those making the greatest advances to define the speed at which we proceed. As someone who's worked in geopolitics as well, it's quite extraordinary that we look at something like the current geopolitical stress over the Strait of Hormuz. We think that's a serious problem, which it is. But here we have a world where it seems that we're perhaps firing on phenomena that we don't understand. And as the daughter of an American ambassador who was long involved in the dialogue with the Soviet Union, we usually talk to our opponents. Firing on something we don't fully understand might not be the best way to begin a conversation with something that might possibly be intelligent, or maybe even more intelligent than us. But not only that, this comes to a bigger issue, which is central to the markets right now, which is the definition of what is intelligence. And of course, we are finding that extraordinary things from slime to mushrooms have intelligence. We're surrounded by non-human intelligence. We've just used artificial intelligence to crack one of the whale languages. And what was so amazing is that we found out these whales have a nickname for the marine biologists that study them. And those marine biologists were so excited about their nickname. They're like, what's the nickname for me? And I'm like, did anyone ask the whale what it has to say? No, because our ego is in the way. So if we can't even recognize that we are living in an environment that is teeming with non-human intelligence, how can we begin the discussion of what constitutes the kind of non-human intelligence that might be a national security risk? Very difficult. So this is why I say the issue for the markets is not the sudden discovery that all of this is real. And when I talked to my daughter, she said to me when I said I'm first going to start writing about this issue, some serious things are happening in the US Congress. She said, Mom, everybody already knows. I said, what do you mean they already know? She said, it's your generation that doesn't have a clue. Young people have an iPhone in their pocket that has more computational power than we needed to get a human on the moon. They are using artificial intelligence, and they're making discoveries at an extraordinary pace. It's perhaps a generational issue that the older generation is still stuck in ways of thinking that are no longer applicable. So I just put that on the table that we need this pace of scientific discovery and technological innovation to continue. We are discovering new materials that we never knew about before. We are discovering new definitions of what is sentient, what is life. Artificial intelligence is fascinating because we are racing towards artificial and general intelligence and putting massive sums of money behind it, while at the same time trying to pretend there's no other non-human intelligence. That does seem ironic. And that is the central issue right now in the financial markets. As we know, day to day, we're all looking at, have the markets overbought artificial intelligence, but not able to discuss non-human intelligence. How interesting.
So there's this, people use the term petrodollar, right? Oh, it would be the end of the petrodollar regime if we were to come out with this technology that would have, boundless energy, for example. But it appears we're already moving towards that with artificial intelligence, which you mentioned, which everyone, on balance, seems to be fine with, and we're doing it, let's put it that way, regardless if people seem to be fine with it. How does that also have as we move into a do you think that moves into a post-petrodollar situation where we have to rethink the economics of scarcity? And how do you relate these two things? These words are kind of used together in AI, UAP, and finance land. So I'm curious how you think about that and differentiate it.
Yeah, let me just give you an example. In Austin, Texas, we have already a company that I won't say the name because, well, no, it doesn't matter. We're not in a financial market context here. Anyway, Oklo Atomics, very interesting. They have created a small modular reactor with fewer than 300 engineers in less than 365 days. So the traditional view that to create a new nuclear power plant is $30 billion in 30 years has just been completely decimated by what they're doing. That's happened in part because the governor of the state just said, go. So that's already here. Then we already are seeing other companies, Valor Atomics in California, that have created small modular reactors using TRISO fuel that are movable. So now you can have a nuclear power plant.
Alrighty there, you have been listening into lawmakers, military, financial officials, a little bit of everybody with a lot of knowledge speak on UFOs, the technology to finding more information about UFOs going on about that. So it's a topic that I know a lot of people are interested in. I'm particularly interested in it because I mean, I think we all want to know what is living with us. Is there really anything that is living with us? There's so many questions to go behind that. So a lot to follow there, even taking a look at that. Not only that, when we do kind of these big live feeds where we're able to tune in for quite some time, I like to have other feeds that we are monitoring, and that is kind of what we did here. So again, we're continuing to monitor breaking news out of Venezuela as you see the cleanup continuing there, the search for the remaining survivors as well, and the White House, where we are said to there is said to be a meeting with Mike Johnson to take place today, and the president to take place today, I should say, after of course the major revelation, the major announcement yesterday from President Trump on Truth Social that we talked about earlier in the hour. So we're monitoring that. We're also keeping an eye on your forecast. There you go, a live look right now in Brooklyn, a rainy few days ahead of. Reminder, you can join us tomorrow on Brooklyn News Live for everything you need to know when it comes to the news. We are going to have that for you. Not only that, we are going to be talking about a brand new segment we recently introduced back on Monday. What was and what's next? What was, we take you through what we're going to take you through on Fridays. What was this week? What's next? We're going to talk about what's coming up not only this weekend, but next week. So join us again, 2 p.m. tomorrow. We will have every headline you need to know and so much more. That is again live on Brooklyn News Live. In the meantime, thank you so much for joining us throughout the entire hour. We're back tomorrow with much more of those big headlines. Join us live again, that is at 2 p.m. and for the news as it happens, you can follow us on our social media pages there on the bottom of your screen. Not only that, we even had some breaking stories that came out today while we were on the air. We brought those to you instantly, so that's another reason to tune into us every weekday. Everybody have a great day, stay safe.